but he's just another part of the year. He's in he actually lives in Colorado the rest of the year.
I think it's the same fella. Yeah, we used to live a few houses apart in the
Yeah,
edge of watercolor.
cool. Mr. Moore, it's good to see you. Kind of.
You. Yeah, well, you're right. Good to be here.
That's great. You need to bring Sharon sometime. That would make everything better.
Yeah, well, I
That's
have to
what
go.
everyone says. Yeah, I hear the same thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think I'd have to pull her out of a movie.
Probably. Maybe you could do it. Okay, you're not Harrison.
No, I'm not. My name is Kelly.
Yeah, I know who you are.
Okay. Yeah, yes. We haven't met in a very long time, but it's good to see you again.
The joy is mine. There's Mr. Minix, and I'll say it in front of everyone. When you see Tim, usually you see the ceiling because he's usually
Yeah,
walking
that's
around.
right.
And he holds. I think he's got a little phone holder that he attaches to his belt and walks around on his waist. So what you see
You got a
Hello.
you got a fax connected to that, Tim? Or
is
No. Mostly just my arm and hand.
okay.
Tim could confer on this. I think I may be the oldest living remaining board member. Tim,
You know, you'd have to reveal your age for me to really know that.
I was 92 last month.
Wow.
I think you've got a good
Wow.
chance of earning that prize.
we will award you that. Kelly, you're probably second.
Yeah, I'm next in line for sure.
That's great.
I won't reveal my age at this
That's
time.
probably a wise decision. You intimidate us. Hello, Kathy Pulley.
Hello, hello. Good
What
to
a
see
treat.
you all.
How is life in Missouri?
Life in Missouri feels perfect today. It's a spring day and 72, I think, so not bad.
That's good. It's
Yes.
today I have traveled from Ottawa, Canada, where it's very cold, by the way, and but wonderful people. I mean, I really like the people there, but they have to be nice to each other because they're all inside with each other. And now I'm in Jamaica, so I went
Oh,
to one extreme to the other today.
Wow.
When your daughter invites you to come along on a spring break vacation, you come. You say yes.
absolutely.
Right.
Because at some point they'll stop asking. Mr. Fletcher's there. Jerry, it's good. The moment you came on, my IQ meter went up about 10 points on the call here. Or yet. Ross, we're glad you're here. Else it's going to be kind of a short session.
Yeah, yeah.
That's great. Well, we'll give it about 1 or 2 more minutes and we'll get going. It's fine. So thank everyone for being here. We're trying to figure this out a little bit. I've said this before, but the first few sessions we're doing here, hey Rick, we're kind of catching people up a little bit on what Heartbeat's been doing the last year. And Jeff, I don't know you, but I'm glad you're here. But we're kind of catching up on some of the initiatives, the work and stuff, because we're trying to continue Landon's work and share Landon's work and all that. And we're going to start pivoting actually tonight. And next month, we won't just talk about the work, but we're also going to start sharing and we're going to start having discussions because the intent of this long term really is a lot of us went to Landon sometimes and we just had good conversations and we'd talk about stuff that's important to us and how things worked or don't work in the world. And we got some wisdom. And so we want to have some of those conversations continue. So we're just going to have, discussions like you would have with Landon as best we can in kind of a poor way of imitation, but there's a lot of goodness on this call already. And so we'll just enjoy that. But I'll start. So we'll get into this. So we'll try to go 30 minutes. And those who want to hang around a little longer, we go to 45. Don't want to take too much time. Some of you have to get back to your crime stories, show. And I know that's important to you. But first disclaimer, I've known Ross for 50 years. Okay. Understand his sisters were dear friends of mine before he came to college and he and I roomed together a year. So you're going to hear me talk to one of my dearest friends on the planet, so it'll be biased. And just be aware of that. That's my disclaimer. Beyond that, then I'll take every shot at him I can. Um, so the reason we're here for this is you recall that in January, Eric, who's on here, Eric Fletcher, shared with us what's happening on the Heartbeat platform, the course materials, the curriculum, all these things, the podcasts that are available, the Instagram accounts, the reminders, the emails you can get. And it's just terrific. And Eric deserves, he's like Patton for us. He makes it happen. And
What a bad
you have,
save.
if you want it, you have access to more of Landon's materials than you've ever had right now. You can get it. And last month, we had the great team from ACU, the Saunders Center, that Landon left his legacy materials there, asked for certain things, and we heard 3 different people talk about all the things they're doing and what they're doing to kind of encourage us. In the last few months of his life, Landon asked me to, and Don Williams asked me to become chairman of this, and said, there's some people around me, we need to make this happen, right? And so a lot of people have joined in, and all I get to do is call the meetings. That's really pretty true. And most of the work happens between meetings by people like Eric and Jerry. But the last few weeks, all of a sudden, he said, guys, I've been thinking about this for a long time, and there is one thing that I think is most important, and that is that we need to train communicators, people how to communicate to people who are non-believers. And I remember almost with chilling effect on me, he said, we teach our people how to preach to Christians. We teach them how to talk to insiders, and there's not even a single class that's really teaching people how to reach to outside in a way that's different than just religiosity, or a different way that's different than just how to do kind of a church better. Perhaps an overstatement, but it gets at the heart of what Landon's all about. We'll talk about Ross's history with Landon in a minute, but there's a long history there. I texted Landon and I said, Landon, if I could get Ross Cochran to be responsible for that curriculum, would you be interested? And he said, I would be thrilled out of my mind if Ross would take this on. And that day, Ross said yes. So Ross retired. That was, about 4 months before Ross retired, and just a few months before Landon passed. Ross retired then in May, and he's been working on this with most of his life since last May. Most of his life. So with that, Ross, I'm going to start. Glad you're here. Thanks for being here. The first thing I just ask you is, you didn't just start with Landon and pick his stuff up and start reading it, the last few months. You've been kind of tracking with this for a while. Why don't you just share and talk about your background? Terry used to sit down. The IQ of this place just went up with Jerry, and now the goodness went up with Terry. There you go. But why don't you just talk about your history, knowing Landon, being around Landon, and some of that, if you would. And you can turn it off mute anytime you want, or you can keep it on mute and we'll have a better call.
Let's hope I'm better at curriculum than I am at tech. First of all, I want to introduce a very dear friend of mine, Kelly Dell. She's just below me on my screen. I don't know where she appears on yours, but Kelly worked for me for a while as a personal assistant, and then she started having babies, and we couldn't do that anymore. But I've asked her to do some things for me with this curriculum. So she's been doing some research and also checking some transcripts that I intend we'll be using going forward. These AI transcripts that are on HCU Digital Commons are pretty good, but the recordings are old, and so Kelly's gone through and done some of that checking and some other things. So just really proud to have her on board in this role. So when I was in college at Harding in the late 70s, 2 people had a profound influence on my thinking publicly. One was Jim Woodruff. Jim was preaching at the college church. A lot of you may have passed through at that time. But Jim kept emphasizing the Gospels, and when we would ask him how to read our Bibles, he'd say, well, read a Gospel, and then read something from Paul, and then read a Gospel, and then read a book in the Old Testament, and then read a Gospel. And he turned my generation from thinking the goal was to belong to the correct church to the goal was to follow Jesus and I remember Jim saying this. He said, "You know, I'm so taken with Jesus," and he was. I'd follow him into hell if that's where he led me.
Mhm.
And that sort of sentiment captured our imaginations and our hearts. And then Landon would come on campus and at the college church and speak. And I can remember one occasion in particular. I was taking a summer school class at Abilene Christian. Had just cleared a minor late and was needing to catch up. So I moved to Abilene the summer of 1978 to do this summer school course. And Landon was preaching at one of the local churches there on a Sunday night. And I remember going and I felt physically moved at what I heard. And I remember leaving, ducking out, and standing in the parking lot, leaning on my car, and trying to figure out what was it that I just heard. I couldn't even express it. And all of you have stories like that, I know. But Landon, the way I'd say it is Jim pointed me to Jesus, and Landon pointed me to the world. And he would tell the story of calling Jesus calling Matthew and how all the tax collectors would gather there and the religious leaders were upset with him. But just pointing out those kinds of shifts, I'm not sure we get full benefit of the Gospels unless we think we're the Pharisees. But he would point out things like that and how the common people heard Jesus gladly and stuff that just hasn't been as visible, hadn't appeared in my gospel records, at least then. So I remember reading an article by him, several, but one in the Restoration Quarterly called "Outside the Camp," taking the language from Hebrews 13, and that caught me. And then I sat down with Landon in probably the fall of 1992 in the basement of the Natick Church of Christ building and just outside Boston with James Walters and Doug Brown. And I was trying to see if there was a way that I could write my dissertation at Boston College on Landon's work. But I think, Tim, you got the blame for this. I think somebody said, well, Landon had just had his heart surgeries and we probably have X amount of Landon left. And some guy named Tim Minnick said, your project just doesn't make the cut. And I thought, yep, that makes sense.
That's probably true, by the way. I have to say that. But that's why Tim's always having to walk because he's running away from somebody. But
Anyway, but that all is turned out fine. And I was probably access would have been a problem at the time anyway. But a few years ago at Pepperdine, I did a couple of classes on Landon's work. I think I called one "Good News in the Marketplace," using the language he used so much. And then, um, listen to the heartbeat, the philosophy of the ministry philosophy of Landon. And anyway, I just always, as all of you have, been captured. My imagination's been captured by his point of view, his reading scripture through the lens of a human being. Those occasions when Jesus says the Sabbath, man wasn't made for the Sabbath was made for mankind. And anyway, I just have been enamored with his work for so long and delighted to get this opportunity to do this. So
that's awesome. The thing I think you find with this is since the 70s, Ross has been kind of tracking this and he's seen waves, and Landon's life evolved. I think all of us here who knew Landon not know that he wasn't at the end exactly where he grew as a human being, grew in his knowledge and the way he expressed things. So, but Ross has been tracking him. So we came to this, and so Ross, back since really, I think over the Christmas holidays, despite by the way, every few months, Ross seems to he gets exhausted with his work, so he has a surgery on it. He does stuff like replaces a knee or something like that. So any excuse he can to lay around. But absent that, I could tell you we're friends. I go after him. But absent that, Ross has been working on this with the majority of his time. So Ross, why don't you just tell us about the curriculum you've been developing? Tell us kind of what it is, who it's for, how it might be used, and just the kind of different things behind it. So if somebody says, "What is this? What are you doing?" How would you answer?
Yeah. So as Brent said, Landon asked that this be written. In fact, digging around his archives and some of his journals, this isn't a recent dream of Landon's. For some time, you can see in some of his materials, he knew that that we needed to train new communicators.
So
And
wait. So his journals. So these are what do you mean his journals?
well, Tim had his, I think Michael Hawkins sent them to Tim, and Tim digitized them, and I'm getting to read through Landon's journals from the last, I don't know, 20 years.
It's
And
page by page, day by day, isn't it? Right? I mean, this
yeah,
is
it
where he
is.
just
It's not every day, but and these aren't short entries. He would write and get on a theme and raise questions, talking to himself. You know, that's what it sounds like to me. He was thinking things through and asking questions, and um, rich stuff. And then, of course, the archives at ACU are just, um, we're just beginning to get into those. There's so many of them, but
I think the journals I just think are interesting. I want the group to know. I mean, I knew about this, but usually in his, I mean, he didn't have a spouse. But he talked to some people intimately, but in his journals is where he shared, in a way that in some of his deepest intimacies. And not everyone has access to all of that because so it's just sensitive. But the board and the people we've decided Ross should have access to that because he's writing this on behalf of Landon's wish. So he's really, I think, he's got access more than I'll have, to some of this stuff for sure.
um,
Keep
but
going.
so these curriculum pieces, Landon actually expressed desire for two pieces of curriculum. One was to train new communicators, and I've been thinking in terms of there's an academic version of that. We think that college students and graduate students are just in a place in their lives, in a time in their lives, are in modes of thinking and rethinking in their college work and graduate work, that would be a ripe audience for this kind of curriculum. And then also a non-academic version that I'm having breakfast with a young man up here in Bentonville uh, regularly enough. We've had really good conversations. This is a young man who has gathered his neighbors around. In the summer, they show movies on his garage door. Everybody just from the neighborhood comes and sits in his driveway, and um, I love that he's looking at his neighborhood and saying, "What can I do?" But I think there's people like that of different ages that, and when I describe this to people, they go, "Boy, that." Or describe Landon's ministry to people who didn't know Landon. They're like, "Man, that sounds really. I'm interested in that." Um, I was talking to a guy working on the fence today and telling them about Landon, and I need to send him a little clip of something Landon did that would help him better see Landon. And but so there's one piece that's for communicators that has two versions, academic and non-academic. And the other piece I heard Landon say, that I heard him describe, not directly to me, but that he wanted, was that we need training in the churches to interface with people who are not religious. A story I've told several times. It's a painful story, but I have a coworker who was working in an office on our campus at Harding, and whatever they were talking about prompted him to ask her the question, "Well, don't you have any friends who aren't Christians?" And her response was, "Well, I try not to." And I thought, how insulated we've become. And how are we reading scripture? How are we reading? I'm afraid we made the Gospels the children's curriculum. And then when people graduated from high school, we went to Acts and the letters and kind of forgot about the Jesus stories. I'm afraid might have happened. But I thought, where do we get this idea that we're not supposed to be salt and light and having conversations? My good friend Alan Howell says that God changes the world through conversations. And that seems to be really true. But to have those conversations means somebody's got to initiate them and enter them and enter them with some sensitivity and some genuine care about the other. So the piece of curriculum about, training church members to interface with their non-religious neighbors, with outsiders, is also on the horizon. Michael Hawkins suggested to me that Rice, he's moved to Joplin, which is about an hour north of where I am right now. So we've been having lunch several times. And he suggested to me, rather than writing a curriculum, just show us how to do it. And so I'm in some very, very initial attempts at messaging Um, and Michael's coached me some on that. And now Eric Fletcher, I came home last night to 2 or 3 boxes of technology that Eric's trying to teach me to use to make some of these videos. So that's the projects. But the idea is we have, as a church, lost our mission to the world, and we need to reclaim it. And how can we do that? I don't know if it would be of interest to you. I can show you kind of an overview.
Yeah, that'd be
Of what
great.
this is just so the outcome is to equip persons with perspectives and skills to communicate Christ-shaped messages to non-religious persons.
And really, Rod, this curriculum that we have here, this is the one that someone at like a class at Pepperdine might have this right now, or a graduate program or some seminar might use it at ACU or something else, or some other Bible chair might use it in connection with that, right? I mean,
Yes, and I've been talking with some
that's really what
campus
this is for, right?
Well, yes, I've been talking to some campus ministers who nowadays, there's not many Bible chairs around
Yeah.
anymore where they have academic classes, but their college students maybe in a non-academic setting could use this version. So yeah, right. So, and it looks like every spring after this one, I'll have an opportunity on Harding's campus to do a class which will morph a weekend class most likely. Or shorter term, it wouldn't be all
So why
semester.
don't you just show it briefly, and then Ross, and let's talk about use of it after that, okay? Why don't you just
Yeah,
give
yeah,
us.
yeah, just real quickly. So this is I've got 5 units and with 2 or 3 lessons each. Here's more of an expanded. The challenge is that we've lost our mission to the world, and God's universal concern is God loves the whole world. And I think, as all of you who are familiar with Landon's journey know, his world tour, I think, helped Landon see what that universal concern would entail and how that transformed him. Landon uses the phrase "the failure of religion." I would use the idea that religion's lost its credibility in the world. It's usually only religious people who, not always, but who find religion helpful in most ways. But so we'll touch on that as well. The rise of the nuns and duns will be treated later, but responding to the challenge, this is kind of Landon's response, Heartbeat's response, his philosophy, his theological assumptions. If you know his paper, The Human Being as Nexus of World and Faith, that's where this would feature. Well, then the audience, the rise of the number of people who aren't religious anymore, and the expanded embrace of the secular worldview, and then how she would reach people like that. The message, this is where Landon's emphasis on non-religious language for people for whom religion, hearing religious language would end the conversation. And so that's treated there. And then this what has to be true of us as communicators to make this happen. Here's our template. I'm using these 4 words: learn, listen, think, and do. And learn, I'll introduce what the lesson's about and give a brief presentation. And then the listen is input, mostly from Landon. We'll use mostly Landon's input here. There may be some other sources we'll identify as well. The thinking is discussion questions for group use, and reflection questions and journaling questions for individual use. And then we're going to have something to challenge the participants to actually attempt to do. Nothing changes without new action, of course. And so that's where we're headed with that.
So Ross, with this, which that's great. It's a long list there. It's hard to parse all that out for us, but I think a lot of that language is things a lot of us are familiar with. So it's great.
I never shared my screen, did I?
No, it's okay. But
I should have.
You weren't on mute. That was an improvement.
Yeah. At least, yeah. Okay. Anyway.
But I think one of the challenges is you have something that people needs to be used. So I think you've got it in Harding, and this one of the things that I think we're going to address as a board, and all of you friends of Landon, I'll say, let's talk about this. It comes out that now that we have these things, how do we use them?
Mm-hmm.
How do we encourage or find ways for it to happen? And it's not just going to be among 6 or 8, whatever, Christian universities that come out of the Stone Campbell movement. It's got to be broader than that. And what are those applications and places that this could be used, whether it's different churches might use it or groups of faith, or is it translated into podcasts that people would listen to, or what is this? So I think that's part of it. And if some of you have thoughts about that, Ross, other people would, Jerry, Tim, I'm looking at all the people on here. I'm missing some people, but well, give us your input, give us your ideas, help us figure that out. But it's otherwise we'll have to re-release this in 40 years and it'll, have to be recreated by someone. But
That's one of the big questions to me is who are the users of this and who are they and what platforms do they have? I know a couple of people who have immense followings, but the heart of their Instagram presence isn't really about messages. It might be about travel or sometimes products or things like that. So finding people who are already doing some sort of podcasting that would maybe morph some of their presentation this direction might be a promising step forward. But yeah, wide open to hearing other suggestions.
so Ross, with this, kind of, why do you mentioned this earlier about the woman who you knew who said, I try not to have friends, right? Who are not Christian. So about that. Fundamentally, we get down to it. Why is it so hard for people who love church so much, and I'll say that, who love, and the church has meaning to them, and they've experienced it in their lives, usually for some good period of time, right? Why is it so often, not in every case, but so often hard for them to even know how to talk to people about in ways that they would consider to be helpful, spiritual, religious, redemptive, whatever term you want to use?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Why? When a new church is planted, there's a lot more evangelistic zeal. We want to grow this church. And then that the church grows to the point that they've got 20 or 30 children. They need children's classes. And they start having teens present, and they need youth ministries. And the older a church get, the more of its resources go toward feeding, feeding their own people. And I realize that's an institutional reality, but somewhere along the way, we just again, and I think part of it, honestly, part of it is we have a strong heritage in our restoration heritage, but our restoration heritage is focused on the church and the forms the church takes and the practices the church practices, and not so much about following the person of Jesus. And so we've got some things sort of built into our DNA that have contributed to our inward turn. And so I think we're just going to have to take the sock and pull it inside out and turn around and.
But do you think you said it's the DNA of the, like I'll call it the Stone Campbell, but man, I see other groups having the same issue. I mean,
Oh yeah.
I know Methodists that are very inward focused and aren't very good at this, and
Oh
I
yeah.
know Catholics. I mean, it's not.
Oh no.
I think it's bigger than just people who know who Bats over at Baxter was.
That's right. That's right. Bushel barrel basket. It is the nature of institutions, right? That self-preservation has to be a pretty high goal.
Yeah.
And individuals are always going to be able to be more Christ-like than an institution is, because
Yeah.
institutions must worry about self-preservation. And that's just self-preservation isn't the way of the cross.
Do
And so
you think sometimes that there's this tension, it seems like, between trying to be pure and be right and be good and trying to be evangelistic? So it seems like sometimes to me, you can look at by nations, by the way, Japan, India, etc., some of the Aztecs, etc., they focus so much on protecting the inside, they lost their aggression and their influence in the world. Ultimately, they became inwardly focused. But I think there's this tension between trying to be out in the world and knowing where the limits are and being pure and holy and right. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like, I think a lot of people don't know how to do that.
Mhm. Well, I love in the Gospel of John where Jesus says, in the world, not of the world.
Yeah.
And of course, salt, it's got to be both in contact with what it's trying to influence, but also distinctive. And so you've got several places in the teachings of Jesus where they're pointing to this. I like the analogy. I'm trying to learn to play the stand-up bass again. I've got a stand-up bass on display in my home in Searcy, and when people see it, they say, well, "Do you play that thing?" And I say, "Well, I display it. See, I've played it. I've played it about 6 months, 15 times. You know, I just need to keep starting over. But the thing about stringed instruments is you don't get music unless there's tension, and the tension that Jesus calls us to be in the world, but not of the world. I think if we can do both of those fairly well, we're going to be at our best uh, spiritual health um, when we can live in that tension between um, engagement in the world, but distinctiveness also. And so I think that's pretty dominant actually in the teachings of Jesus.
So for most of us, who, let's just say you take a person and they say, most of my friends I know from work or church, they may go to church with me, but they may go or other churches that are kind of like mine. We have similar values, we kind of run together because we like to do the same kind of thing. We don't want to do too much on a Saturday night, but want to have some fun. I kind of want to be good with my family, and they want to be good with their family. We have similar interests. How do I broaden my world? Because the things I like to do are the people like to do those things are people like me. I
Hmm.
mean, it's like I'm not going to go start. Honestly, at this point in life, I'm not going to learn how to play Indian, musical instruments and start wearing a different kind of clothing. And I do like curry, by the way, but I mean, I'm not going to change my culture. What do I do?
You know, I'm no genius here, but
Thank you.
I think we have to look for and seize the small opportunities. Have the conversations in the margins of our day. I've encouraged students, as they think about their careers, it's Friday afternoon, and somebody walks by your cubicle and say, "Hey, we're going to Lenny's for drinks after. You want to come?" Say yes. Order a cherry Sprite. That's what I would do. But go and have the conversations. And this conversation I had with a man today working on our fence. He's got a wonderful story, and just, hey, how long you been doing this? Where did you learn how to do this? And um, I learned about his father. He hadn't spoken to his father in 17 years. But it's just conversation. I think Landon's onto something pretty important when he just says, it's just authentic interest in the other. Just who is this person before me, and what does it mean to love them in this moment, in this space, in this conversation, face to face, and to genuinely care about their well-being. And I think we need to become better conversationalists. But I think
Mm.
a big deal is just look for the opportunities to, hey, tell me about you,
Well, Ross, for me, for a lot of people here, my life's pretty full. They say I've read most people can handle about 30, 35 relationships, right, that are important to them. You just can't keep track of them. I can't nurture them. I can't do it. Some people on here can probably only handle 15. Some people might be able to handle 50, but there's a limit, right? And
Mhm,
most of us are kind of managing all the relationships we can.
mhm.
How do I invest in new people when my life's already full? I mean, it's like, do I give up my church time? Do I give up my children's time? If I can only have so many relationships,
Mhm.
or do I live my life in a different way? I can have more relationships.
Yeah.
How do I really invest in people? What do you
Y-
think?
um, all of us probably know more people that we like to be around. We think we benefit from being around. They're good people. They inspire us. We,
I'm
you know,
looking for some. I haven't found any in a long, long time.
well, I can introduce you to a bunch of people I know that I would benefit from being around. Some of them are on the screen that I know, but uh, I, you know, um, I think our calendar's our friend. I've got to follow up with a friend in search. He's a believer, but he wants to talk again, and so that made the calendar. I'll lose track of him if I don't. But we may have to, instead of having 35 Christian friends, we may just need to have 34 and develop a friendship with someone else. I think Landon's one of the things he said. We've got to maintain conversations with folks in the world if we're going to get better at this. And not all the conversations will be deep or long, but I think if we practice kindness, if we practice attentiveness, to the people in front of us. I think my experience has been opportunities will pop up for the longer conversations and
Mhm.
um,
It seems to me that you have to really want those conversations to happen.
they
If
scare
you
me,
look and
actually.
look for them, and so when they come, you accept them and you embrace them, right?
Well, yeah, but they can be a little scary because they're going to ask you stuff. This guy said, "You taught Bible at a college?" I said, "I did." He goes, "Well, I got a question for you," and I'm just like, "Oh no, what is it?" And I preface it by saying, "Well, I may say I don't know the things that typically puzzle people who read the Bible or puzzle the people who teach it." So, but that was his first question. He somehow from previous visits out here knew about that. So, but yeah, I think just walking across that threshold of comfort into the discomfort sometimes is just the best stuff happens there.
It seems to me, I mean, Landon, we're here a lot because of Landon's connection, and he's not a model for everything. I repeat that I mean, he's not a model for everything. But he kind of did give up in his life a lot of relationships, right? I mean, he's made a few moves where he said he went outside the walls
Mhm.
and he didn't, some of his closest best friends, he almost, he stayed friendly with him, loved him, but he didn't spend as much time with them. He spent time with new people.
Mhm.
I may be wrong, but I think it's hard if you're going to add new friendships that are meaningful and real, you have to probably give up some existing ones. And I don't think that's a most people, most of us, and we're not willing to put our first fruits, our first of the flock on the altar of evangelism, if you want to call that the old term, or put on the altar of that. Um, because we want to maintain it. I mean, why don't you respond to that? Then Tim's raised his hand. Actually, he's
Yeah.
Mr. Technology out there walking in the.
I'd rather hear Tim's response. Go ahead.
Yeah, Tim, you got an answer to that question?
Well, I have some thoughts. When you love someone unconditionally, the circumstance in each moment dictates your response. Think about when your children were young and they are crying in the middle of the night. They need their diapers changed. They're hungry. It's a natural response to go do what they need. Their need, their what's in their best interest takes precedent for most parents over their tiredness, their inconvenience, their, why do I have to do that? And so if you think about it, we've built our lives, and especially some of us on this call, we built our lives around being high level, quote unquote, executive business owners and managers. So we structure our lives around being problem solvers, managing time as well as possible, and leveraging through others. What we don't take into consideration all the time is the simple story of the Good Samaritan. And the real essence of that story, in my opinion, is that everybody had the opportunity to help this person that was lying in need, and only one did. Everybody else was too busy. They were on their way to something. They already had their schedule full. And so I think the test for us is to say, how do we respond when we're driving down the highway and we see flashing lights in the middle of the night? Do we just drive by because it's inconvenient? And by the way, we know that if we take the time to check, it may involve time, it may involve money, it may involve some risk. There's a lot of things messy that goes along with actually taking a moment to see what somebody may need.
Yeah. And for me, part of the problem is it's sometimes strangers, but sometimes it's people I know. I mean, it's like could be my daughter, it could be a stranger. But hey, Jeff, you raised your hand too. You had something.
Thanks. I'm Jeff Pierpont, and I live in northern Vermont and
Oh,
had the opportunity in 2018, 2019, and then after the pandemic in 2022 to spend some significant time with Landon and a small group of folks that would meet at his place and spend a couple of days just talking. And I want to go back to the question around. I think that we have the church part, the Christian part down pat. And I think what we have forgotten is how to be a human being, how to be a normal, regular human being in a world filled with other normal, regular human beings who are just trying to live their lives. And we have a hard time relating to them. And I think the question that we have to ask ourselves is why? Why do we have a hard time relating to our fellow human beings? Is it because of barriers that we have put up? Probably.
Mhm.
We've put up those barriers because it's kept us from being worldly. It's kept us from being tempted. Whatever the excuse is that we've built, fences around where our relationships can be and where they can't be. And that is as far away from Jesus, I think, as you can possibly be. We have to reclaim again what it means to be a human being, which, after all, if you go back to Genesis, is good, right? It's good.
Yeah.
And so we have to reclaim what it means to be a human being again. I've only known Ross for 37 years, not 50 like you, but we've known each other a long time too, and others that are here. Thank you for letting me raise my hand.
Oh, that's great. David, hey, Himes, what a treat.
Thank you, Brent.
Oh, it's great.
I think an interesting point to consider in all of this discussion is the clarity with which Landon saw the audience, which I think there's always a tendency when we're inside talking about what Landon did is to miss that point. And one of the things that is, I think, also true is that most of what we say to ourselves is inappropriate for what Landon was trying to reach, the people he was trying to talk to. So you can ask the question, well, why don't we do this more ourselves? But the answer is that it's not everybody's gift to do that. And so part of the question is, who are the people who are most likely to pick up Landon's banner, if you will, and I'll use that as any way you want to use it, but who are the people who are most capable of picking up that banner and executing it? It's the point that Ross made at the end. It's the doing part. And we can talk about the intellectual aspects of it, and that has value to it. But that's still different from the person that actually goes out and does it. And that may be a different audience than what we're trying to reach to. And I think that's a big part of the dilemma of this whole discussion. And that is, how do you take Landon's message and reach the people who can use it the most and who are already, Sunday morning at church, we talked about one of our elders that just came back from visiting a missionary in Thailand who's got a coffee shop and a couple of churches that they've started, and now Thailand may be a bad example, but that's the kind of guy who is probably most capable of taking the substance of Landon's content and actually doing something with it.
Yeah.
Where I'm sitting here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that's got a church on every other block, and I'm not sure that I'm in the right environment to best take advantage of that content. So I think there's an aspect of focusing the message to the right people, and who are the right people who are going to take up this banner and run with it. Eric's
do
got
think I've had, Landon could walk with every intellectual, and he did, and he loved really thoughtful intellectual theologians and other stuff like that. But they usually came to him, in my opinion.
hmm
Usually went to somebody doing something with another human being. I always think those people, the theologians came to him. Landon went to and responded to the person actually with whose hands were on that. If Fletch, you had something, buddy?
I agree with a lot of what David said, a lot of what everybody said. The thing that strikes me is, um, regardless of how isolated, insulated, how whether we're the right people or not, we all have neighbors. And um, I was convicted some time ago having something like this kind of conversation and expressing it's hard for me to expressing all the challenges. And the person who I was visiting with just said, "How's your neighbor doing?" And interpret neighbor any way you want to. Who is our neighbor? Uh, every one of us can be a good neighbor. And one of the things I'm really excited about that Ross is working on is that piece that shows us how that can help me remember, hey, I don't have to have a heavy conversation I don't have to have a deep intellectual conversation. I don't even have to have a conversation. It might just be, uh, how are you doing today? Is everything okay?
Mm-hmm.
But part of what Ross is working on is something that will show us how to have those conversations. Help us remember that.
I think we
Uh,
overthink things a lot, don't you, Eric?
yeah. Oh
We
my
try to
gosh.
solve the whole
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
and we miss the cup of soup in front of us.
It's years ago, and I might get in trouble for this, but years ago
You're
when a
already in
bunch of
trouble.
us were in Houston, uh, and there was a known, I don't remember the figures now, but how much property churches own in Houston, Texas. And it's a staggering, it's a staggering amount. And anywhere, pick your city, Tulsa, Austin, pick your city. How much property we own and got to have it. There's the whole institutional issue or question that Ross has already spoken to very eloquently. But do we know who our freaking neighbors are? Are we sure they're not hungry? Do their kids have shoes for school? That gets me because I know I don't, and that is where any of us can do anything.
Yeah, we can. All right, it's like 7:46. I'd rather cut this short and leave us wanting more than going too long and getting tired with that. But Ross, I'll give you a chance. But before we go, just how does this kind of feel to you? How do are you enjoying getting to think about this and have these conversations?
Yeah, it's a little intimidating because who understands Landon? Not me certainly fully, but and then I just like Landon explored a whole new territory. I feel a little lost sometimes, honestly, about how to get this into the hands of people who um, can use it, as David was saying. The Although I do find that when people who don't know of Landon's work hear the germinal idea that he's trying to speak messages from God to people for whom religion is currently a turnoff. And so how do you do that using non-religious language? And they without exception, they respond, I am interested in that.
Yeah.
I'm interested.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're talking, young people too. So
With this, I think one thing Landon did, and I'll say for me, this why I'm spending time here. I'm doing this for one. It just takes one human being who's worth everything. I always think I think Jesus would have did everything. God would have done everything he did. Jesus would have given everything just for me.
Mhm.
I'm the only one. He loves each of us, everybody that much. And I'm doing this and if there's only one person that benefits from this, that's great. I mean, that's enough. And when I look on this, I see Tim Minix, who's had a group going the last several months,
Yep.
using some of the materials, and what we're doing here has inspired that. If it wasn't for this, that wouldn't have happened. I see Jeff Moore. He's doing stuff with his friends, even in Baltimore, that he's using some of this stuff and working stuff out with people. And because we're doing these things, we're happening, and it goes back to, I think, what David said with Himes was right. It's not just in Ross, we just need to do, this. And if we do, I think the path becomes clear. God says, there's a light to my feet. I don't see the whole path. I don't get a road map. I don't get, Google Maps. I can see where I need to step, so we know the thing to do today. And I'm kind of left with that. So Ross, we're very thankful for that. Next month, we have Mike Cope with us. Most of you probably know who Mike is or know Mike. He's been around Landon for a long time, and is somebody who spent hours and hours and hours talking about kind of what all this is and how to go. And he's really active right now in trying to, in a number of ways, in helping many types of churches and strong Christian faiths expand. And we're going to talk to him a lot about, again, this inside outside. Mike's wrestled with helping the church and helping those outside the church and trying to do both those things. So we're going to talk about some of these same things next week with Mike. Not next week, next month. Second Tuesday every month. So I appreciate it. And I love the fact that some of you are so technologically gifted that you raised your hand today and got into this. The fact that 10 minutes did it first is amazing. It tells you that miracles happen.
I want to add
Yeah.
one thing. There are enough people on here that, if you look at the stuff that Eric posts on Facebook, there are not very many likes on those things.
I don't post that stuff, by the way.
Whoever
And
posts.
the just a quick tag on to what Brant or what somebody was saying. Sophie, what's her last name, Brant?
Holton.
Yes, Sophie is not from our tradition. She didn't grow up hearing Landon. She ran into Landon, I guess, was in Abilene for a while, and she's just picked it up and runs with it. And she's a great example.
But my point is
Yeah.
that there's at least 10 people on here, and there are rarely 10 likes on
Oh
those.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so I'm just saying, if we see that stuff, it is an aggregating effect. If you like it, somebody else will see that you liked it, and somebody else will see that you liked it.
Pass it on to somebody else. I like the newsletter every week when the email comes out. I try to forward it to somebody, and some of them are picking up, adding into it. Just everyone I want to forward to somebody because I think they need it, but you can use it. Hey, appreciate all.
David's
Yeah.
exactly right. It's terrible to talk about the number. I hate talking about the numbers, but they do make a difference.
They do.
The numbers on the people that listen to the podcast, that makes a difference because it's a self-fulfilling kind of thing. So yeah, when you have a chance, pass it on. Sorry, Brant.
Ross just put a note. So Luxury, who is Tim's assistant, who's on here with, you see the T down there. Ross is going to get her the outline, and he's going to get that sent to everyone who's on here, so we can all see that. And you will be expected to master the curriculum, and there will be a test, and your grade will be posted.
Good night, guys.
Hey, I appreciate all of you. So thanks. We'll see you next month. Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Hey, thanks, Ross.
Thanks, Ross.
Thank you, Ross, very, very much.
There you are, Buckley.
We'll see you, Terry.
Take care. Well, we get it out.
Bottom right is where there's a thing. Very bottom right of the black screen.
Thank you.
It says leave. You bet.
Well, Brant,
Yeah, there you go.
where are you in Carmen, San Diego tonight?
I am in Jamaica.
Jamaica, okay.
So about a couple of 6 weeks, 8 weeks ago, somewhere in there, Brooke said, "Hey, we're going on spring break. Do you want to come with us?" And you say yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So literally, we got back from a round the world deal, and then Sunday I had to go up to. It's a long way to get to Ottawa, Canada. I had meetings there all day Monday, breakfast through dinner. And then this morning I got up and came down here, and here's the lovely Melita. It's right over there.
Hi, leader.
It's kind of furry. It's got the
Yeah,
blur.
yeah, yeah. What time is it there?
It's 7:50, so it's the same time zone because they're Eastern time zone, and so but they don't switch the daylight for a while.
Okay, okay,
So we came here, and then Friday we'll go back to Dallas.
okay. Well, very good.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Doing real well. Yeah, yeah. Doing really things are going well. This um you know, yeah, Eric's helping me with some technical stuff and that'll be good. But things in the big picture are good. Um
How's Steph?
got a little surprise yesterday
What's that?
at Harding.
Oh, I know. You cried, I heard.
How'd you know that?
I might have heard about it already. I might have known it was going to happen.
Okay, well, you and a long line of rascals. I had no idea. I mean, Mac reached out to us last Thursday or Friday, said, "Hey, we're doing this lunch, for theological stuff. We're going to kind of redo
Yeah, the
this."
Bible part gets together on Friday sometime to do this. Yeah.
And I said, "Well,
Melita,
we're not going
I
to be here."
heard this when I was in Ottawa. Tell the story because Melita hasn't heard it yet.
Okay, well, so Max Sandlin, who heads our theological studies major, 325 students are second majoring in this. Used to be called vocational ministry, but anyway, he called Thursday, said, we're having this lunch Monday for, we're going to dedicate or going to renovate this new space, an old classroom, and make it a theological studies student hangout, something like that. I said, well, that sounds great, but we're not going to be here. We're leaving tomorrow to go back to Bentonville. He said, well, if you change your mind, let me know. And so I didn't even mention it to Stephanie because um, we weren't going to be here. And then she said, I don't know, the next day, she said, I've really enjoyed having this downtime here at Cersei. And I knew that if we went back to Bentonville, there's some projects here. She'd just jump right back in. And so I said, well, I don't care when we go back. We could stay if you want to. She said, well, really need to speak to Chris Buxton. I need to meet with him. He heads up our campus ministry initiatives. And so we could do that Monday. I said, okay, I don't care. So we'll just leave after the lunch Monday. So I texted Mac back and said, we've changed our mind. We're going to stay. And so we got to the luncheon after our meeting with Chris, and I walked in. I said, Mac, I just want you to know that we delayed our departure 72 hours. We believe so strongly in this theological studies major.
You liar.
We delayed our departure 72 hours just
Well,
to
that's
support.
actually true because Stephanie was deep in the goo play.
Yes, she was, but I didn't know that. I had no idea. But apparently they've been cooking on this for some months. And anyway, they had a little video, and I was like, and after I listened to it a little bit, I thought, what are they doing? And I turned to
My
Stephanie.
understanding was you thought at first it was the video just on kind of the major, and you had recorded.
Well, yeah, they recorded. They asked me to contribute to a recording that they told me was to recruit. So I thought, yeah, that's great. To recruit new students to this major. So yeah, I participated, and but when the video started, it started out, I was the first voice on the video. Like, okay, so I had history with the major, and that maybe makes sense. I'm eating my sandwich, and and the next person said something about me, and the next person said something about me, and I'm like, what is this? And then I realized what they were doing. I turned to Stephanie. I said, did you know about this? And of course, she very much did for several months, but she just kept saying, I'm so relieved I don't have to keep that secret anymore.
I heard the reason they did it was she got tired of hiding it from you because they were going to wait and do it, that Springsteen weekend. And she just said, I'm just tired of hiding it. We have to tell them about it now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, will you guys be back in country in Springsteen weekend?
I will be, she will be with her sisters.
Okay. All right.
Dedication is?
Well, I hope to see you. They're having us a little dinner.
5 o'clock.
I'm sure okay. Yeah, I think that's right. Anyway, Yeah, come on.
Those 2 weeks ago.
We're off the call.
Hello, Stephanie.
So,
Melita's over there.
okay.
I need to get the effects off. She's over here, but I need to get the effects off where it's how do I do this? Because I got it on blur.
Well, the funniest thing to me was he looked over at me at the beginning when he said, "We almost weren't here. We almost weren't here." Like, that was like,
It was
oh yeah. I was like, you have no idea. Yes, you were going to be here, but anyway, I had figuring it out. But
That's great.
yeah,
Well, I heard
Thursday morning.
you're a
From
sneaky little thing.
Well, from Thursday morning, there was a kind of a get together to talk about a meeting to talk about some things, and I was concerned that, you know, one of the concerns was when if invitations started going out for the dinner,
Yeah.
that he would find out,
Yeah.
and it wouldn't be a surprise.
Yeah.
And I was so concerned about that he'd pick up my phone and it would be a text from somebody.
That's
Uh,
right.
And so from Thursday at around noon until Mac said, well, we could do something Monday, because we were, you know, they have theological table talk, and I thought, you know, well, maybe we could stick around till Wednesday, and it was, oh my goodness, it was, if I think about it, I'll start crying. It will be one of my favorite memories forever and always. It was the sweetest thing.
Oh, I bet it had to be. You had to
It
love
was
how much people were loving on that night.
sweet, so
And
sweet. He was,
Ross, you should know they thought they were gonna have to pay like $5,000 or $6,000 a person to get them to video it, and the price was only $1,000. Everyone was happy to do it for 1,000. They love you that much.
Discount.
They got a massive discount.
it was really sweet. And there was something, uh, there was something sweet about uh, his sharing that time, you know, being in the room with his colleagues, with so many of his
That's great.
colleagues.
That's outstanding. I know you could have done it a different way. I got it off blur. Here's some lead over here, but I got it off blur. But it would have been good to have done it the other way. But just that more intimate way with your colleagues was also incredibly special.
It would have been fun. I was, you know, there was, we were talking about it, and one of my concerns too was they were asking me for, you know, who to invite and all of those things, and you know, who did I want to call, and it just got to be, I wanted to make sure that everybody that he wanted on there was on there.
Yeah,
And
that's good.
I did not, I had no, I could not figure out how they were going to keep it a secret another full month.
But
When people start to find out.
it's well deserved.
Yeah, thank
It's
you.
well deserved. You despite what you've heard, you were not the third choice. You were the first choice. But it was, I mean, really well deserved.
Well, thank you, Brent. My
And
uncle,
Matt called to talk to me about it.
he did.
Yeah, oh yeah, he's almost giddy. I mean, serious. He was like just I could see it, but he was just his voice was just full of all this like, bubbliness, and he just kind of had to catch himself talking about it. It was wonderful.
It was sweet.
He's
They
funny.
they took some video, so I don't know what they'll do with that. But he looked over at the face. He said, he did look at me. He goes, we almost weren't here when they started, and he was the lead off. And then he looked at me, I think 2 or 3 times, and said, did you know? Did you know about this?
Yeah, I mean,
So,
did Cleopatra know that Mark Antony was going to be around Egypt? Yeah, oh yeah.
Well,
it
I
was
walked,
a
I walked in and
moment.
saw Jeff Montgomery there and Haley Pruitt from the PR office. I thought, good, this major's going to get some PR, you know?
Oh, it's good. Yeah.
Oh, I couldn't make
I-
eye contact with anybody. I was so incredibly stressed over the weekend. I didn't sleep Sunday night. So anyway, I was so
I-
relieved.
You're one of the people that of anyone I know, you would be the most surprised by it because, of course, it would never have occurred to you. You just it would. You're just it's wonderful. But
So anyway,
Is that
all
a
right, see you
whiteboard?
later.
Is that a whiteboard behind
no,
you?
it's just it's a piece of art over there. It's some painting in this little
It
Hilton.
doesn't- it looks like a whitebooth though, doesn't it?
Does it look like a dress? It's
I'm sure
not.
they'll be,
The-
yeah.
is
There's
it-
Well,
no
Hey,
harm.
Melita.
Alita, all right, we'll see ya.
Yeah, y'all having a
Bye.
good
Love you
time.
guys.
We're going down to play cards with the Coles now.
Oh,
Oh,
fun.
fun.
Well,
Coffee
Fun.
shop.
All right, see
So-
ya.
hello, hello.
Take care.
Well,
Bye bye.
Caleb's Caleb's
what?
not there, right?
No. They have a different break. This is Maggie and Anderson's break.
Gotcha.
And so Anderson kind of got to pick the one to come to beach and all this. So they're down here, and Matt and Brooks. There's 6 of us.
Cause we saw Caleb
No.
Sunday morning at church. So
In 2 weeks, he and Claire and Bradley and Avery are going skiing with Matt and Brooke somewhere in Utah. They found like a
Okay.
good deal. So they're going
well,
there.
when I see Caleb and Claire, they just light the place up. I really do like to be around
Claire
them.
just got hired on at Pulaski Academy in Little Rock.
Oh, didn't know that. Okay.
And Caleb's office is moving like a mile from there, something like that. So it's right there. They're going to be both out there in West Little Rock. It's going to work out well. And
They'll still be in Searcy because their house is, they got a house there until, I don't know, next December or something. So.
they're renting a house, so they'll be commuting down together for a while.
Yeah. How fun.
All right, love you. You guys take care.
Oh,
See you.
one other quick thing. Em and William are expecting. Stephanie told me to tell you.
Really?
Yeah. So
What
she won't teach next fall, September, and she won't teach next fall. And William started his. Oh, okay. It's not public news that she's not going to teach there next fall.
Just a minute. Wait. Delete. Let me
Yeah.
get that.
Well, the school knows. Yeah.
Well, yeah, Matt knows. but
We won't
they-
care.
Okay. All right. We'll keep that under your hat. Just that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. Way to go, Steffi.
Yeah.
Wow.
She didn't have anything to do with it.
Oh, she did it once upon a time.
Yeah. True that.
Yeah, because of that, she's on the spiritual life committee of Harding.
That's right. That's right. Well, tell
All
everybody.
right. Bye-bye. I'll see you.
Bye-bye. Brent's so funny.
It's Susan.